I coordinate our LA Raids Rapid Response Network with CHIRLA, which is the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights. And what we've been doing ever since June, when we first expected these operations to begin, is making sure that our community is prepared. And that means doing the Know Your Rights workshops, telling our community members through these workshops not to open the door if ICE comes to their house, to remain silent if ICE stops them on the street, and to make sure they don't sign anything and that they ask to speak to an immigration attorney before they offer any information. So we've been doing these Know Your Rights workshops with our different partners in Los Angeles ever since June, because that's when we first thought that these operations would begin. So honestly, every single week since then, we've been in preparation mode. We've been strategizing with different volunteer attorneys that are part of our LA Raids Rapid Response Network to make sure that we have a strategy if people start being arrested, and then there needs to be intakes at the local ICE processing center. And so regardless of what happens, whether the operations start tomorrow or whether they start on Sunday, we have been prepared.
Explain what you mean when you say don't open the door. Would then ICE knock the door down?
Right. So here's the thing. ICE only has permission to enter an individual's home if they have a judicial warrant that is signed by a judge. And not only that, but that judicial warrant has to have all of the information, including the person's name, the person's address, the time of the incident. All of that has to be accurate. So I can say, and our attorneys know this very well, that it is very rare that ICE is actually able to obtain a judicial arrest warrant. Most of the time, they do not have that, meaning they do not have permission to enter people's homes. So given that, we tell our community members that if ICE knocks on the door, no matter how aggressively, no matter what they say to people, and we do know that this is a very deceptive agency that pretends to be police, that doesn't answer questions, we tell our community members that no matter what ICE does, don't open the door, because the only way that they could get in is with that judicial arrest warrant. And if they give you any sort of administrative warrant or any other kind of document, you have to review it to make sure that it's a judicial warrant signed by a judge. So that's what we tell our community members here in Los Angeles. And
what if they don't speak English? How do they read this warrant? And how do they know what to look for? What is legitimate and what isn't?
Exactly. That is a very good point. It is a very complicated process, which only makes it more important that we have these Know Your Rights workshops. So our Know Your Rights workshops, they're in Spanish. They're for our community members here in Los Angeles, our immigrant and undocumented members. And what we do is we have copies of a judicial arrest warrants and use that next to an administrative warrant that ICE usually uses when they goes to people's houses, and we compare the two. We pass those out to people so that they familiarize themselves with those documents, so that in the case that ICE does slip it under the door, they're able to recognize it. But I think that that's a very good point, that this is an agency that is trying to deceive people, and these people may not know what is going on. For the people that don't attend Know Your Rights workshops, they may not know what a judicial warrant is and whether ICE has permission to enter their home. And so that only makes it more important that we do the outreach to make sure as many people are aware of their rights as possible.
Natalia Aristizabal of Make the Road, how are you preparing here in New York, and what is the city doing?
Good morning, first of all, and thank you for having me. So very similar to what was being shared from CHIRLA, we are doing Know Your Rights, but additionally what we're doing is also letting people know who is possibly at risk right now. The administration leaked, or like the press found out information specifically about who they're going to be looking for. So we're telling community members those rights, but also saying if you had a previous order of deportation, if you had any contact before with ICE, you are likely a person that they're going to come looking for you. They often, for different reasons, have people's home addresses, and that's how they're going to go and find someone. So we tell people, you have to go and get a legal screening. You have to go try to get and see if you have any relief. And then definitely to do family preparations. If you have a little kid, you need to figure out who in your family is going to be able to take care of that little kid. You need to be able to put together your paperwork and your home passport and put it in a secure place and make sure that someone in your home knows all this information. And also in a city like New York, know that there is legal representation free and available.
And Adelina Nicholls in Atlanta of the Georgia Latina Alliance of Human Rights, how are you preparing there, and what is the city doing about this?
First of all, thank you for having me. Amy, we have been preparing since 2016, and I don't know if you remember that we had here like a nationwide another operation that was to target Central American families around the United States. Here in the state of Georgia, more than 130 families were targeted with their children. At that time, our concern is that why our community members continue opening the door to ICE. So we engage in a basis door-to-door campaign called ICE Free Zone, Zona Libre de ICE, where we go talking to people, to neighborhoods, to the trailer parks, to the churches, to the grocery stores, canvassing. Many volunteers have helped us with this purpose and allowing us to talk directly to our community members. At this point, we believe that we have visited more than, or talked to people, more than 25,000 communities around the metro area and statewide, but as well trying to send and using the social media for people to connect what is happening inside their own communities. We are trying to put together forces as well to pushing back these detainer policies that could allow the localities not to collaborate with ICE.
Can people intervene, Shannon, if they see a raid taking place? And what about these collateral arrests they're talking about? Anyone in the way?
Mm-hmm. Right. That's a very important point as well. And it's something that puts a lot of fear in the community, because even though Trump is saying, I'm going to target people, very specific people, Central American families and people with final deportation orders, it's not just that. ICE has the discretion to make collateral arrests. So there may be people just in the wrong place at the wrong time that do get swept up into the deportation machine. And that's something that we teach folks through our Know Your Rights workshops. And I think in terms of how folks can respond, we always say that if you are a citizen, if you are an ally, use that privilege. Be able to, when you see something going on in the street or you notice that your neighbors are experiencing some kind of ICE arrest, go out and document what is happening. Film ICE and try to make the situation calmer for the family, because it is such an intense and terrifying situation to have ICE come to your door early in the morning and arrest you. And so we really encourage the community to protect each other and to make sure that people don't feel alone in that scary moment.